Ex-wife's life turns upside down after meeting ex-husband. What does he want from her this time? Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character, Jessica. Jessica had always considered herself a strong and independent woman, especially after her divorce from Michael. It had been a difficult and painful journey, but over time, she had found her rhythm. She rebuilt her life, focusing on her career and surrounding herself with friends who truly cared for her. But just when she thought she had finally moved on, Michael showed up. Their last encounter had been months ago, a brief and awkward exchange at a mutual friend's party. Nothing had been resolved, but she convinced herself that she had closed that chapter. She had to, for her own peace of mind. Now, as fate would have it, Michael was standing in front of her once again, and Jessica couldn't help but feel a sense of unease creep over her. What could he possibly want now? They hadn't spoken in months, and the last time they did, the conversation ended in silence. She'd been the one to walk away, determined not to let him back into her life. But here he was, looking like he hadn't changed a bit, yet there was something in his eyes that made her nervous. Was it regret? Was it something else? Michael, who had been once so sure of himself, now seemed almost vulnerable. Jessica couldn't help but wonder what had brought him here. Was he looking for closure, or was he trying to rekindle something that had long since burned out? The questions raced through her mind, but she held them back. She couldn't afford to let her emotions cloud her judgment this time. She had been through enough, and the last thing she needed was to get tangled up in the past again. As Michael took a step toward her, she took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever was to come. She didn't know what he wanted from her, but she was about to find out. I should have known better than to expect Michael to just disappear. After all, we had spent years together, shared a life and a future that never came to be. But now, seeing him standing in front of me again, I couldn't help but feel a rush of emotions, confusion, frustration, and fear. He hadn't changed much. He still had that confident, almost smug look in his eyes, but there was something different about him today. It was as if the years of separation had made him softer? No. I wouldn't allow myself to think that. I couldn't let my guard down. I had worked too hard to build my life back. The last thing I needed was to let him back into my heart. I took a step back, not to avoid him, but to make sure I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me uncomfortable. "What do you want, Michael?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. He hesitated for a moment before speaking, and I could see the tension in his shoulders. "I just want to talk," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "We never really finished things, Jessica. I owe you an explanation." An explanation? The audacity. Did he really think I needed closure from someone who had already left me once? It wasn't just the divorce that hurt. It was everything that had led up to it, the lies, the broken promises, the silence. The last thing I wanted was another round of his empty apologies. "Michael, I've moved on," I replied, my words sharper than I intended. "You don't owe me anything." His face fell, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. I wasn't trying to be cruel, but I couldn't let myself forget why we were no longer together. "You've moved on?" he repeated, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Really?" "Yes, I have," I said, looking him square in the eye. "And I don't need anything from you. Not now, not ever." There was a long silence, and I could see the wheels turning in his head, like he was processing everything I had just said. He seemed to be searching for something, an opening, a way to bridge the gap between us. But I wasn't giving him anything. I couldn't. Michael cleared his throat, then stepped closer. "I get it. You're angry. I deserve that. But there's something you need to know, something I should have told you a long time ago." I didn't know what he was trying to say, but I wasn't about to let him get away with it. Save it, I said, holding up my hand. Whatever it is, I'm not interested. He paused, looking at me like he was trying to figure out how to handle my coldness. Finally, he sighed, his expression shifting from frustration to something closer to regret. Fine. I'll leave. But just know this, there's more to this than you think. I'll be around if you ever want to talk. And just like that, he was gone again. I stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of everything he had left unsaid hanging in the air between us. What had he meant by that? What was he really here for? I wasn't sure I would ever know the answer, but one thing was clear, he hadn't come back for closure. He had come back for something else. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It had been a few days since Michael left, and I still couldn't get his words out of my head. There's more to this than you think. What did he mean by that? I hadn't expected him to come back into my life after all this time, but I never imagined he'd leave me with more questions than answers. I tried to focus on my work, throwing myself into my career like I always did when life got complicated. But even that wasn't enough to distract me from the feeling that something was missing. My phone buzzed on the desk, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a message from my best friend, Sarah. Are you okay? You've been distant lately. I sighed and typed back quickly. I'm fine. Just busy. I couldn't tell her about Michael. She didn't know the full story, and I wasn't ready to explain it all again. Sarah was a great friend, but she couldn't understand why I still let Michael's presence linger in my life, even in such small ways. I could feel the tension rising again, so I decided to go for a walk. The fresh air might help clear my mind. I grabbed my jacket and headed out the door, trying to shake off the heaviness that had settled in my chest. As I walked down the street, I passed by the cafe where Michael and I used to go every Saturday morning. It was strange how those memories still felt so vivid, like they had just happened yesterday. I stopped for a moment and stared through the window, seeing people laughing and enjoying their coffee, completely unaware of the emotional storm brewing inside of me. Was that how it was supposed to be? Was I really supposed to forget all of it and move on like nothing had ever happened? I wasn't sure I could do that. But I couldn't stay stuck in the past either. I turned away from the window and kept walking, my thoughts swirling around like a tornado. Then, just as I was about to cross the street, I saw Michael again. He was standing near the corner, looking around, as if he was waiting for someone. My heart skipped a beat when our eyes met. He didn't seem surprised to see me, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. I couldn't tell if he was relieved or nervous, but there was something in his gaze that made me hesitate. Jessica, he said, taking a step toward me. Can we talk? I wanted to say no. I wanted to walk away and pretend I hadn't seen him, but something in his voice made me pause. There was an urgency in it that I hadn't heard before. What do you want, Michael? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He hesitated, then took a deep breath. I know I've messed up. But I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I just need you to understand why I did what I did. The words hit me like a wave. I had spent so many nights wondering why he left, why he chose to walk away from everything we built together. And now, here he was, asking me to listen to his reasons. My emotions were all over the place, but I couldn't ignore the part of me that wanted answers. All right, I said, nodding slowly. I'm listening. I stood there, still feeling the rush of emotions from the last few moments. Michael's words hung in the air, leaving me in a state of disbelief. I had been waiting for an explanation for so long, but hearing him actually say it felt like a punch to the gut. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. That much was clear. But then what was he asking for? Understanding? Closure? Something else? I tried to steady myself, keeping my focus on him as he spoke again, breaking the silence between us. I know it's hard to hear, he said, his voice quieter now, almost reluctant. But I need you to know, Jessica, that when I left, it wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I didn't know how to fix everything. I felt lost. The words were heavy, and I could feel the weight of them pressing down on me. I had spent so many nights wondering why he left, what had gone wrong, and now, here he was, trying to explain it all. But the explanation didn't feel like enough. It didn't feel like it would change the past. You left me, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. You left us. And now you're asking me to understand? He looked at me, his eyes softening for the first time since we had met again. I know. And I'm sorry. I should have told you everything back then. But I was scared, Jessica. I didn't want to lose you, but I thought I was already losing myself. I wasn't the man you needed me to be. I could feel the anger bubbling inside me, but I pushed it down. I had been angry for so long, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to let go of that anger yet. So what now? I asked, trying to keep the bitterness from creeping into my words. Now you want me to just forgive you and move on? Michael hesitated before answering, his gaze drifting away for a moment. When he looked back at me, there was something in his eyes that I hadn't seen before, vulnerability. No. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Jessica. I'm asking you to understand that I'm not the same person I was before. I've changed. And I'm not here to ask for another chance. I just wanted you to know the truth. His words hung in the air, and for a moment, I wasn't sure what to say. Part of me wanted to shout, to scream at him for all the hurt he had caused. But another part of me, that part one had buried deep down, felt something different. A crack in the wall I had built around my heart. I don't know if I can ever understand it, I said softly, looking away from him. But I do know that what you did, it still hurts. Michael nodded, his expression full of regret. I know. And I can't change that. But I needed you to know why. I couldn't leave without telling you. I didn't know what to say next. I didn't know if I was ready to forgive him, or if I ever would be. But one thing was clear, I had spent so long trying to move on, and now Michael had come back into my life, bringing with him questions I wasn't sure I was ready to answer. I walked away from Michael, feeling a mix of confusion and frustration building inside me. His words had hit me harder than I expected. I needed you to know why. But what did that mean? Could knowing the reasons for his actions really make the pain go away? I didn't think so. I had spent years trying to forget what had happened, and now here he was, dragging it all back to the surface. As I walked down the sidewalk, I tried to push the thoughts aside. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I wasn't ready to forgive him, not yet. Maybe not ever. The pain was still too fresh. But why had he come back? Was he really looking for redemption, or was there something else? I tried to focus on the path ahead of me, but my mind kept wandering back to Michael. His face, the vulnerability in his eyes, it all lingered in my thoughts like an unanswered question. I needed time to figure things out. I needed space to breathe. The past was too complicated, too tangled up in what had been, and what could have been. There was no easy answer, no way to simply fix it. I didn't even know if I wanted to fix it. Maybe I had already moved on, maybe I hadn't. It was hard to tell. The further I walked, the more I realized that there were no simple answers. My life had changed. I had changed. I had become someone different after everything had fallen apart. And I wasn't sure if I could go back to being the person I was when I was with him. That woman, the one who had believed in our future, who had trusted him, she didn't exist anymore. It wasn't just about the pain, it was about everything that had led to it. The lies, the silence, the way he had shut me out when I needed him the most. And now, here he was, asking me to understand. But was understanding enough? Could I ever really understand what had happened between us, or was it simply a chapter in my life that I had to close and never look back on? My phone buzzed again, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Sarah. You still up for dinner tonight? I'm making your favorite. I smiled, feeling a brief moment of relief. Sarah always knew how to make me feel better, even if it was just for a little while. I quickly typed back. Yes, I'll be there. I needed to focus on something positive, something that wasn't tied to the mess of my past. I couldn't let Michael control my thoughts anymore. As I made my way to Sarah's place, I tried to quiet the storm in my head. The evening was supposed to be a distraction, a moment of peace. But as the door swung open and I stepped inside, I couldn't help but feel the weight of everything that had happened. Michael was still in my life, in some way. And whether I liked it or not, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. I arrived at Sarah's apartment later that evening, feeling the weight of the day on my shoulders. As soon as I walked in, she greeted me with a warm smile and a hug, her usual energy doing wonders to lift my mood, even if just a little. "You look like you've been through the ringer," Sarah said, her eyes scanning me with concern. "What happened?" I smiled faintly and shrugged. "You know, just life." It wasn't the whole truth, but it was enough. "Let's eat," I added, trying to move past it. I needed the distraction. We sat down at the kitchen table, and Sarah served dinner, her home-cooked meal always bringing comfort. As we ate, Sarah chattered about work and her latest dating adventures, but my mind kept drifting back to Michael. I could feel my stomach knotting as I tried to push him out of my thoughts. Sarah's voice cut through my haze. "So, you and Michael, huh? What's going on with that?" I froze, unsure of how to answer. Sarah had never been one to hold back, but this felt different. I had never told her everything about my past with Michael. She didn't know the full extent of what had happened, the hurt and the betrayal. "We talked," I said, forcing myself to meet her gaze. "He came by a few days ago." Sarah put her fork down, sensing the tension. And it wasn't what I expected. He wants me to understand why he left. But I don't know if I can. I don't know if I even want to," I confessed. Sarah sat back, her expression thoughtful. "I get it. He hurt you. And now he thinks he can just waltz back into your life and explain it all away? That's not how it works, Jessica." I nodded slowly, appreciating her support. "I don't know what he wants. He says he's changed, but I can't just forget everything that happened." "You don't have to forgive him," Sarah said, her voice firm. "But you need to decide if you want him in your life again. That's on you, not him." I sighed, the weight of her words settling in. "I don't know if I'm ready for that. I've spent so long rebuilding my life without him, and now it feels like he's trying to pull me back into the past." "Then don't let him," Sarah said with a knowing look. "It's your life, Jessica. You're the one who has to live it." Her words were a simple truth, but they hit me like a tidal wave. I had spent so much time worrying about Michael's reasons, about what he wanted from me, that I had forgotten to focus on what I wanted. I needed to take back control of my life, to stop letting the past dictate my future. As the evening wore on, I found myself grateful for Sarah's presence. She always knew how to put things into perspective. I didn't have all the answers yet, and I wasn't sure if I ever would. But for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was finally on the path to healing. I wasn't ready to let Michael back in. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I was ready to move forward. I had to. For me. I hadn't seen Michael in a few days, and I had to admit, a part of me had been relieved. The weight of his presence, of his questions, had been overwhelming, and for the first time in a long while, I was starting to feel like I was regaining control over my life. But then, as I walked into my office one morning, I saw him standing there, waiting for me. He looked almost out of place, standing in the lobby of my building, like he didn't belong in this part of my life anymore. My heart skipped a beat. Why was he here? I had made it clear that I needed space, that I wasn't ready to let him back into my life. But there he was. "Jessica," Michael said as soon as he saw me, his voice soft but urgent. "We need to talk." I took a deep breath and forced myself to stay calm. "Michael, we've already talked. I don't know what else there is to say." He stepped closer, and I instinctively took a step back, not wanting to give him the chance to close the distance between us. "Please, just hear me out," he said, his eyes searching mine for some sign that I might be willing to listen. I hesitated. I didn't want to hear more from him. I didn't want to go back down that path of uncertainty, of second-guessing myself. But there was a part of me, a small part, that still wondered what he had to say. Fine, I said, my voice tight. But this is the last time, Michael. I can't keep doing this. He nodded, his expression serious. I understand. But I need you to know something. What? I asked, already feeling my patience wearing thin. I've been thinking a lot about everything. About why I left, about what I did to you. And I realize now that I was wrong, he said, his voice thick with regret. I should have never left you, and I shouldn't have let you go through all of that alone. I felt a lump form in my throat at his words, but I swallowed it down. You're right, I said quietly. You shouldn't have left me. But you did. Michael. And that's something I can't just forget. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and hope. I know I can't undo the past. But I can promise you this, I'm not the same person I was when I walked away. I've changed. And I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to know that I'm here now, and I'll be here for as long as it takes. His words hit me harder than I expected. I had spent so much time trying to build a life without him, trying to forget the person he used to be, that I hadn't allowed myself to think about the possibility of him being someone different. Someone better. But could I really let him back in after everything that had happened? Could I trust him again? I didn't know. I need more time, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. I can't make any decisions right now. Michael nodded, his face falling slightly but understanding. I get it, he said softly. I'm not going anywhere, Jessica. Whenever you're ready, I'll be here. I watched him turn and walk away, and as he disappeared into the elevator, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of emotions swirling inside me. Could I ever let him back in? Or was the past too broken to ever be fixed? Only time would tell. I had spent the last few days in a haze of uncertainty, trying to sort through the mess that Michael had left behind. His words echoed in my mind. I'm not the same person I was when I walked away. I've changed. But could I really believe him? Could I trust that the man who had left me without a word of explanation was now suddenly the person I needed him to be? The doubt lingered, clouding my every thought. I had made so much progress since our separation. I had built a life for myself, one that didn't include him. So why did I feel like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure whether to take a step forward or turn back? Every time I thought about him, about the way he had walked away without a second glance, I felt the anger rise again. But then I remembered the way he had looked at me the last time we spoke. The regret in his eyes was undeniable. Maybe he had changed. Or maybe I was just fooling myself, hoping that he had. The truth was, I wasn't sure if I wanted him back. I wasn't sure if I could ever trust him again. But a part of me wanted to believe that people could change, that they could grow. And maybe that part of me was hoping that Michael had done just that. I went to bed that night, my mind still racing. It wasn't until I woke up the next morning that I realized something important. I couldn't keep waiting for Michael to change. I couldn't keep holding on to the hope that he would become the man I needed him to be. I had already spent too much time waiting for things to get better, only to be let down again and again. I had to start taking control of my own life. I had to stop letting the past dictate my future. It was time to let go. I didn't know if that meant letting go of Michael or letting go of the hurt, but I knew it was something I needed to do. I couldn't let the fear of being hurt again keep me trapped in a cycle of uncertainty. As I sat at my kitchen table, sipping my coffee, I made a decision. I wasn't going to reach out to Michael anymore. I wasn't going to wait for him to come back into my life, to fix everything that had been broken. If he had truly changed, he would prove it through his actions. And if not, I would move on without him. The thought of letting go wasn't easy. It never is. But I knew it was the right thing to do. For me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I was worth more than the uncertainty, the back and forth. I deserved someone who would be there, truly present, not someone who only showed up when it was convenient for them. Michael had his chance. Now it was my turn to live my life the way I wanted. I could already feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready for the challenge. I was ready to move on. Finally. I spent the next few weeks focusing on myself, carving out moments for things that brought me peace. I rediscovered hobbies I had forgotten about, like painting and reading, and even started jogging again in the mornings. The small acts of self-care made all the difference, slowly piecing me back together in ways I hadn't anticipated. Each day felt like a small victory. I began to realize just how much I had been holding on to, how much I had allowed my past to shape my present. And as much as I didn't want to admit it, a part of me still struggled with the idea of completely letting go of Michael. But with every passing day, the weight of his absence felt less suffocating. I wasn't waiting for him anymore. The decisions I made were mine alone, and that freedom felt empowering. One evening, as I was relaxing at home with a book, I received a message from Sarah. "How are you really doing? You've been quiet lately." I smiled at the message. Sarah always seemed to know when I needed someone to check in on me. I replied, "I'm good, really. Just getting back to me, you know?" A few seconds later, she messaged back. "That's great to hear. You deserve to be happy." I paused before responding, considering her words. She was right. I did deserve happiness, and I had spent so much time trying to make others happy that I had forgotten to focus on myself. As I sat there, my phone buzzed again. It was from Michael. My heart skipped, but I didn't immediately open it. I wasn't sure what to expect. Was it another apology? Another attempt to explain himself? Or was he really just checking in? I hesitated before opening the message. It was brief, just a few words. "I hope you're doing well. I'm here if you ever want to talk." I stared at the screen for a few moments, the words echoing in my mind. Part of me wanted to respond, to acknowledge that I had seen his message, but another part of me felt like there was no point. I had already made my decision. I had moved on. I didn't need to keep reopening old wounds. I took a deep breath and deleted the message without responding. It wasn't out of anger or bitterness. It was just that I had come to a place where I no longer needed closure from him. I was at peace with myself, and that was all that mattered. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly free. I didn't need anyone's validation or explanation. I was enough, just as I was. I put my phone down and went back to my book, settling into the quiet comfort of my own company. Michael had his place in my past, but I was no longer letting him control my future. I was ready for whatever came next, knowing that I had the strength to face it on my own.